Hey guys, tonight we are slowing down and stepping quietly into one of the oldest story worlds humanity has ever created. Greek mythology. These myths were not written all at once. They grew slowly across centuries, shaped by mountains, islands, and the rhythms of ancient life. They explain how the world began, how gods were born, how heroes struggled, and how people understood the forces around them. Before we begin, if you enjoy calm, long-form documentaries like this one, feel free to subscribe. It helps the channel grow and brings more relaxing history stories your way. Greek mythology starts not with gods as we imagined them, but with a silent, undefined state called chaos. From that first emptiness came the earliest beings: earth, sky, night, and deep places beneath the world. Over generations, new forces emerged: titans, gods, monsters, and mortals. Their stories reflect the landscapes of ancient Greece, where seas, mountains, and shifting seasons shaped how people experienced the world. For the ancient Greeks, myth was not fiction. It was a framework for understanding creation, natural cycles, family ties, conflict, and fate. The stories were told at festivals, passed along in households, carved into temples, and recited by travelers who moved from one city-state to another. They formed a shared cultural language that survived for thousands of years. In this calm documentary, we walk gently through the entire arc of Greek mythology. From the beginning of the universe to the birth of heroes, from the great wars of gods and men to the legacy these stories left behind. Greek mythology begins before there is a world, before there is sky or earth, and before any gods exist. The earliest state of existence is described with a single word: chaos. In Greek thought, chaos is not disorder or confusion in the modern sense. It is simply an open, undefined space, a quiet gap where nothing has formed. There is no land to stand on, no air to breathe, no light or darkness. It is a beginning without shape. From this still and silent condition, the first beings appear. They are not yet gods, as later generations will imagine them. They are more like fundamental elements of existence. The earliest of these beings is Gaia, the earth. She emerges as a complete presence: the solid ground, the mountains, the plains. In mythology, Gaia is not created by anyone. She comes into being naturally, as part of the first unfolding of the universe. Next comes Tartarus, a deep and distant region beneath the earth. In later stories, it becomes a place of imprisonment for powerful beings. But in the earliest layers of myth, it simply represents depth, the lower part of existence, just as Gaia represents the upper part. Another early presence is Eros. In the oldest Greek sources, Eros is not the playful figure later associated with love. Instead, he is a cosmic force, linked to attraction, generation, and the capacity of the universe to produce new forms. His appearance signals the beginning of movement and connection in a previously still cosmos. Alongside these beings emerge Nyx and Erebus, night and darkness. Nyx represents the quiet, shadowed boundary of existence, while Erebus signifies the deep, obscure spaces that lie between things. These early figures create a world that is still empty, but no longer silent. The foundations of creation are beginning to take shape. In this early stage, Greek mythology is not concerned with physical details. It does not describe how the earth looks or how the sky forms. Instead, it presents an outline of forces: earth, depth, night, attraction, that together form the framework for everything that will follow. These beings coexist without conflict. They do not yet act in stories or interact with one another. Their presence establishes the environment into which later generations of gods will appear. Gaia, the earth, is the first to begin shaping the cosmos. Her presence makes stable ground possible. Mountains, rivers, and valleys are not yet described, but they are implied within her identity. She also produces Uranus, the sky, who rises above her as a vast, arching form. With Gaia below and Uranus above, the basic structure of the world becomes clear: a separation between earth and sky, creating space for life and movement. Gaia produces Uranus without a partner, a detail found in many early Greek sources. This type of generation reflects the early mythic worldview, where creation often occurs through emergence, rather than deliberate action. With Uranus in place, the world has its first vertical dimension, the solid ground below and the broad sky above. From the union of Gaia and Uranus, other beings begin to appear. They include the first Titans, who will later play central roles in myth. But at this early stage, the focus remains on the formation of the cosmos, rather than on individual personalities. Meanwhile, Nyx and Erebus also produce new forms. From darkness and night come ether, the bright, upper air, and Hemeridae. These additions introduce the first sense of rhythm into the mythic world. The idea that light and darkness alternate, that time can be measured, and that the universe contains cycles. These early myths present a world moving from stillness to structure. Chaos gives way to defined beings. Earth emerges. Sky forms above it. Light and darkness establish the first natural patterns. This process is not described as fast or dramatic. It unfolds quietly, reflecting the steady order that Greek thinkers associated with the natural world. The primordial stage of Greek mythology is significant because it sets the foundation for everything that follows. The later stories of gods, heroes, and epic conflicts depend on these early formations. Without Gaia, there is no earth for mortals to inhabit. Without Uranus, there is no sky for storms and stars. Without Nyx and Hemera, there is no alternation of day and night. Without Eros, there is no generative force to sustain birth and renewal. Greek mythology does not imagine creation as a single moment. It describes it as a gradual unfolding, where each new being adds structure to the cosmos. The universe begins not with activity, but with presence. Quiet, steady, and undefined. Only later will movement, conflict, and narrative appear. In this first stage, the myths offer a simple image. A world forming slowly from emptiness, shaped by the emergence of earth, sky, depth, night, and the forces that link them together. As the earliest forces of Greek mythology settle into place, the quiet openness of chaos becomes a structured world. The first beings that emerged, Gaia, Tartarus, Nyx, Erebus, and Eros, form the foundations of existence. But creation does not stop with them. The myths describe a gradual unfolding. From these primordial presences come new beings, each adding another layer to the universe. The result is not a populated world, but a framework of forces preparing for the later appearance of gods, titans, and mortals. Gaia, the earth, continues to play a central role in this early stage. After bringing forth Uranus, the sky, she produces Pontus, the sea. This moment marks the beginning of the world's surface features. Now the vast sky meets the solid earth, and both are bordered by open waters. The sea is not yet described with waves or depths, but its presence completes the basic geography of early mythic creation. Sky above, earth in the middle, water surrounding. These three, earth, sky, and sea, form the primary layers of the world. They exist as beings, but their identities also represent natural spaces. Greek mythology often moves between these two viewpoints, blending landscape and character without distinction. This approach creates a cosmos where the physical world and the divine world overlap completely. From the union of Gaia and Pontus, a new generation appears. These are sea deities, associated with the waters surrounding the early world. Among them are Nereus, described in later texts as an old and gentle figure, connected with the peaceful aspects of the sea. Domus, linked to sea wonders, and Phorcys, and Ceto, who become ancestors of many later mythological creatures. At this stage, however, their roles are not yet defined. They exist simply as additional elements of the world's structure. Meanwhile, Gaia and Uranus produce the Titans, a group of 12 beings who formed the major divine generation before the Olympian gods. Their names include Oceanus, Cous, Crius, Hyperion, Iapit, and Cronus, along with Dea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and Tethys. In the earliest layers of myth, the Titans do not perform actions or participate in stories. They represent aspects of the world, such as oceans, memory, justice, and cycles of time. Their later roles emerge only when myths begin to describe conflict between generations. In addition to the Titans, Gaia and Uranus produce other beings known for their power rather than for narrative roles. Among them are the Cyclopeas, described as craftsmen of great skill, and the Hecatonchires, beings with many arms who symbolize overwhelming natural force. These figures will later play roles in the struggle between Titans and Olympians, but in this early stage, they stand simply as part of the expanding cosmos. Nyx, the night, continues to bring forth new presences as well. Without a partner, she gives rise to a series of abstract forces. Sleep, dreams, blame, fate, and old age, among many others. These figures represent human experiences that exist independently of divine Their emergence highlights an important feature of Greek myth, the acknowledgement that the world contains not only physical elements but also intangible conditions that affect all beings. From Erebus and Nyx also come Ether and Hemera, who embody the bright upper air and the daylight. With their appearance, the cosmos gains its first cycle of night and day. This rhythm marks the beginning of time as understood through natural observation. Greek mythology does not describe clocks or calendars, but the alternation of darkness and light provides the earliest sense of temporal order. The expansion of the mythological world continues in this gradual way. Each new being contributes to the structure of the universe rather than to narrative action. The myths do not describe movement, conflict, or emotion at this stage. Instead, they offer a quiet list of presences, each representing a part of existence. The cosmos becomes a network of forces. Earth and sky, sea and mountains, day and night, sleep and wakefulness, depth and memory. In many ancient sources, these early beings remain distant and undefined. Greek mythology does not attempt to explain how they look, how they behave, or whether they interact. Their significance lies in what they represent. They form the environment into which the later stories of gods and heroes will emerge. This early stage reflects the Greek understanding that the world's structure precedes its stories. Before there can be conflict, there must be a world in which conflict is possible. Before Zeus or Hera appear, the cosmos must have formed. By the end of this stage, the mythic world is ready for its next transformation. The primordial era has produced a complete environment. Earth, sky, sea, day, night, and the conceptual forces that shape experience. But now, the focus of mythology begins to shift from the creation of the world to the beings who will inhabit it. The Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatonchires will soon become central to the next phase of Greek myth. The rise of divine families and the first stories of succession. With the early cosmos taking shape, Greek mythology begins to focus on the first structured relationship in the mythic world. The connection between Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Their union represents one of the most fundamental patterns in ancient cosmology. The meeting of ground and heavens, stability and expansiveness, foundation and enclosure. This relationship becomes the source of the next great developments in the mythic universe. Gaia, as the solid earth, provides a base of existence. She is the landscape itself, mountains, plains, and the surface on which later beings will live. Uranus, as the sky, forms the overarching dome above her. In early Greek thought, the sky is not an abstract space, but a physical presence, stretching across the world and enclosing it. When Gaia and Uranus come together, the cosmos gains a vertical organization. The earth below, the sky above, and space between them where life can unfold. From their union come the Titans, who represent major aspects of the natural and conceptual world. Oceanus symbolizes the encircling waters thought to surround the earth. Hyperion is linked with heavenly light, while Themis is associated with order. Mnemosyne represents memory, and Cronus, often interpreted as connected to time, becomes a central figure in later myths. These beings begin to populate the mythic universe with forces that will soon act, shape events, and eventually give rise to the gods familiar from later Greek stories. Alongside the Titans, Gaia and Uranus produce the Cyclopes, early figures associated with immense craftsmanship. In later mythic tradition, they become known for forging thunderbolts and constructing powerful weapons for the gods. At this early stage, however, their identity simply adds to the diversity of beings that inhabit the young cosmos. They also bring forth the Hecatonchires, beings with many arms who represent overwhelming natural strength. Their presence in early myths signals that the cosmos contains forces that are vast, difficult to control, and fundamental to the world's balance. Greek mythology often reflects the idea that creation is not only orderly, but also powerful and unpredictable. As these beings appear, Uranus plays an important role in the early cosmic order. In many ancient accounts, he is described as covering Gaia completely, pressing closely against her. This image reflects a world still without separation, a cosmos where potential exists but is not yet free to expand. The beings born from Gaia and Uranus remain close to their parents, not yet able to move or take part in stories. The world is structured but not yet open. Gaia, recognizing that her children cannot emerge fully while Uranus encloses her, seeks a way to create more space in the cosmos. This detail appears in various Greek sources and represents a transition from static existence to dynamic change. In mythological terms, creation often requires separation, the opening of space where beings can live and act. Gaia's concern reflects a simple idea. Growth requires room. Among the Titans, Cronus steps forward as the one willing to bring about this separation. He is the youngest of the Titans, and often associated with cycles, time, or generational change. With Gaia's guidance, Cronus acts to divide Earth and sky, creating the first major transformation of the mythic world. This moment marks the beginning of mythic succession, the pattern in which one generation of divine beings replaces another. The separation of Gaia and Uranus brings the cosmos into a new phase. The sky lifts above the Earth, creating space between them. This space becomes the environment where later stories will unfold. The realm of mountains, winds, clouds, and living creatures. The separation also allows the Titans and other early beings to move into the wider world, initiating the first dynamics of mythic history. Despite this change, the presence of Uranus does not disappear. He remains the sky, always above the world. His role becomes more distant, but his existence continues to shape the physical universe. Gaia remains the Earth, supporting everything that comes after. Their separation does not represent conflict in the modern sense, but symbolizes the natural divisions necessary for a functioning world. The early union and separation of Gaia and Uranus established two essential principles in Greek mythology. The first is that cosmic order arises through structure, earth, sky, sea, and the forces connecting them. The second is that creation involves change. The cosmos is not formed in a single event, but through a series of adjustments, each making the world more complex and more open to life. By the end of this stage, the mythological world is filled with fundamental beings, Titans representing major forces, primordial deities embodying natural features, and early creatures symbolizing strength and potential. The next generation of myth will build on this foundation, introducing stories of rivalry and succession that shape the transition from the world of the Titans to the world of the Olympian gods. With the separation of Gaia and Uranus complete, the mythic world enters a new phase led by the 12 Titans. These beings represent some of the earliest structured forces in Greek mythology, and together they form the bridge between the primordial era and the later age of the Olympian gods. Their rule is not described in ancient sources as a detailed political system. Instead, it represents a long, quiet era during which the cosmos becomes organized enough for later stories to unfold. The Titans are 12 in number: Oceanus, Cuscrius, Hyperion, Iapetus, Kronos, and Tethys, Phoebe, Theia, Rhea, Mnemosyne, and Themis. Each carries associations with broad concepts or natural domains. Their roles are not tied to specific myths in this early period. Instead, they embody categories of existence important to Greek understanding of the world. Oceanus, for example, represents the idea of the world-encircling river, a concept common in early Greek cosmology. The sea, for the ancient Greeks, was both boundary and pathway. Oceanus symbolizes this outermost edge of the world, a presence that surrounds everything else. Hyperion, associated with heavenly light, forms part of the cosmic structure that includes the sun, moon, and stars. His presence reflects the early Greeks' interest in the regular patterns of the sky, the cycles that define time, seasons, and navigation. Phoebe and Dea, embody luminous qualities connected to the moon and brightness. Their identities reflect the ancient perception that celestial bodies are not merely physical objects but expressions of ordered light. Thamus represents law, order, and social balance. In the early mythic imagination, Thymus is not a judge or enforcer, but the personification of the idea that the world operates through principles that maintain stability. Mnemosyne, meaning memory, plays a role in preserving continuity. For a culture rooted in oral tradition, memory is foundational. Stories, ritual, knowledge, and cultural identity depend on the ability to remember. Rhea becomes important later as the mother of several Olympian gods, but in the Titans era, she appears simply as one of the central figures in the cosmic family. Although these early associations exist, the Titans' rule is described in a restrained way. Ancient Greek sources do not provide detailed accounts of their governance or activities. Instead, their era is marked by quiet continuity. The cosmos is stable, structured, and capable of supporting more complex mythological events. At the center of the Titans generation stands Kronos, the youngest of the group, and the one who brings about the separation of Uranus and Gaia. Because of this action, Kronos becomes the leading figure of the Titans. His rule is characterized by chronology and change qualities, reflected in his association with time and generational succession. Kronos is not depicted as a ruler in the modern sense. Instead, he represents the stage of cosmic development in which new generations begin to emerge. During the Titans era, the mythic world expands quietly. Rivers, winds, stars, and natural cycles continue to take shape. The world becomes defined by regularity. Seasons shift, days pass into nights, and the cosmos follows a predictable pattern. This stability sets the stage for the appearance of beings who will introduce narrative action. The Titans also give rise to the next generation of figures who will shape Greek mythology. From Hyperion, come Helios Sun, Selene Moon, and Eos Dawn. These beings represent the observable movements of the sky. Helios travels across the heavens each day. Selene moves through lunar cycles, and Eos marks the transition between night and day. Their presence signals an increasing focus on events rather than on structures. From Iapetus come figures such as Atlas and Prometheus, whose stories will later play major roles in myth. Atlas becomes associated with endurance and the weight of the heavens, while Prometheus becomes central to the creation and advancement of humanity. From Zeus and Phoebe come Leto and Asteria, who will influence the lineage of Apollo and Artemis. The connections among these generations show how Greek mythology links cosmic forces with later divine stories through family lines rather than through physical causation. The Titans period serves as a long, transitional age. It lies between the formless world of primordial beings and the dynamic stories of the Olympian gods. The ancient Greeks did not imagine it as a time of conflict or change. Instead, it is depicted as a stable era, where concepts like memory, law, light, water, and electrolytic forces form a coherent structure. Yet even in this stability, a quiet pattern is present. In Greek mythology, each generation eventually leads to the next. The Titans represent order, but their rule is not permanent. The next mythic transformation will occur when Cronus, who once overthrew Uranus, faces a prophecy that his own children may one day surpass him. That moment will mark the beginning of the transition from the age of Titans to the age of Olympian. For now, in this early stage of myth, the cosmos remains calm, structured, populated by powerful, but still largely silent forces, and ready for the emergence of divine beings whose actions will shape the stories of Greek mythology. As the age of the Titans continues, Greek mythology turns its focus to the figure at the center of this era, Cronus. His rise marks the beginning of generational succession in the mythic cosmos. The idea that one group of beings gives way to another in an orderly but inevitable cycle. Cronus's leadership defines the Titan Age. Yet the myths introduce a quiet tension beneath the stability. That tension takes the form of a prophecy, a prediction that one of Kronos' own children will eventually surpass him. This prophecy reflects a recurring theme in Greek mythology. The cosmos develops through transitions, and each transition involves the rise of a new generation. Uranus had once enclosed Gaia so tightly that their children could not emerge. Cronus changed that structure, but in doing so, he became part of the same generational pattern he once disrupted. The myth suggests that no ruler, however powerful, remains unchallenged in the natural order of the universe. Cronus takes the prophecy seriously. The ancient sources do not describe his emotions or motivations in detail. Instead, they present a clear, simple fact. Cronus decides to prevent the prophecy from coming true. When Rhea, his sister and partner, begins to bear children, Cronus removes each newborn from the world by swallowing them. This act is symbolic rather than literal. It expresses the idea that Cronus absorbs the next generation before it can emerge, halting the natural progression of succession. The cosmos remains stable, but no new beings enter the world. The children Cronus swallows include several who will later become central to Greek mythology: Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. They are present, but unable to take part in shaping the universe. Their absence marks this phase of myth as suspended, a world in equilibrium but without growth. The myths describe the situation briefly and without dramatic detail. The focus remains on the structure of succession rather than on emotional conflict. Rhea, observing the cycle, seeks a way to allow one of her children to survive. The myths present this moment simply. Rhea hides her next child, Zeus. Shortly after his birth, she gives Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth, which he swallows without question. The specifics of this story vary across sources, but the central idea remains consistent. Zeus is protected from the pattern that captured his siblings. The decision to hide Zeus is not described as rebellion or defiance. Instead, it reflects the underlying structure of Greek cosmogony. Each generation must eventually give way to the next. Rhea acts to preserve this natural sequence. By protecting Zeus, she ensures that the cosmos can continue its development rather than remain in a state of timeless stability. Zeus's survival marks the beginning of a quiet shift in the mythic order. While Cronus continues his rule, unaware that one of his children lives, the foundations of a new era are already forming. Zeus grows away from the direct influence of the Titans, gaining strength and preparing for the role he will later assume. The myths do not describe his childhood in detail. Instead, they emphasize the broader pattern. Zeus remains outside Cronus's control, allowing the possibility of change in the divine hierarchy. The prophecy against Cronus thus serves as a hinge in Greek mythology. It connects the cosmic structures established in earlier sections to the dynamic stories that will follow. The tension between present order and future transformation becomes the driving force of the next phase. The conflict between Titans and Olympians. Yet, even as the myth prepares for conflict, the tone of this early stage remains measured and calm. There is no extended description of battles or emotions. Instead, the myths focus on the concept of generational succession. The idea that the cosmos evolves through cycles in which each ruling power eventually yields to the next. Cronus once replaced Uranus. Now, the prophecy suggests that his own time will one day end. The presence of Zeus outside Cronus's reach does not immediately alter the world. The Titans continue their era of rule. Natural cycles persist. The cosmos remains ordered, but the existence of one child beyond Cronus's control means that the mythic universe is moving toward its next transformation. This quiet shift embodies one of the core ideas of Greek mythology. Even in periods of stability, change is always present, moving slowly beneath the surface. The story of Cronus and the prophecy that surrounds him shows how Greek myth frames cosmic evolution not through sudden disruptions, but through gradual, inevitable transitions. By the end of this stage, the world is ready for the next development. Zeus has survived. The Titans remain in power, and the pattern of succession that defines Greek myth is preparing for its next expression, a shift that will reshape the entire divine order. With the prophecy against Cronus unfolding quietly in the background, Greek mythology turns to one of its most central events, the birth and concealment of Zeus. This moment does not involve conflict or dramatic confrontation. Instead, it reflects the gradual movement of cosmic succession, the steady unfolding of a new generation that will eventually reshape the mythic world. Rhea, partner of Cronus, and mother of the earlier children he swallowed, gives birth once more. She knows the pattern that has developed. Each infant is taken immediately and removed from the world. The swallowing of the children represents Cronus's attempt to maintain the current order by preventing change. It expresses the idea that the cosmos, under his rule, has reached a stable state with no new forces allowed to emerge. When Zeus is born, Rhea chooses a different course. The myths do not detail her emotions. Instead, they focus on her actions and the structure of the story. Rhea travels to a distant place, often identified in later tradition as the island of Crete, and delivers the child away from Cronus's immediate presence. The location varies in ancient sources, but the meaning remains consistent. Zeus enters the world outside the reach of the ruling power. In place of the newborn, Rhea presents Cronus with a stone wrapped in cloth. He accepts it without suspicion and swallows it, believing the pattern continues. This detail symbolizes the continuation of illusion rather than deception. Cronus does not anticipate that the cosmic order will shift again, just as Uranus did not anticipate his own succession. Mythic cycles move quietly, and rulers often fail to notice the beginning of change until it is well underway. Zeus grows in concealment. Greek mythology does not describe his early years in narrative detail. Instead, it summarizes this period with simple statements. Zeus is raised in safety, far from Cronus, supported by forces that maintain the order of nature. Later traditions introduce elements such as nymphs, caves, and protective guardians, but the essential myth remains calm and minimal. The focus is on the structural idea. The next generation matures outside the influence of the current ruler. This pattern, a future leader raised in isolation, appears frequently in ancient mythology. In the Greek context, it reflects the principle that the cosmos prepares its next stage quietly, without the awareness of the ruling powers. Zeus grows until he is strong enough to take part in the unfolding of the next cosmic transition. During this period, the world under the Titans remains stable. Natural cycles continue. Day and night follow their rhythm. The early division of earth, sky, and sea remains intact. The presence of Zeus does not immediately alter the order of things, but it introduces the potential for change, a central concept in Greek cosmology, where creation is always followed by evil. When Zeus reaches maturity, the mythic structure shifts again. The hidden child, now an adult god, returns to confront the condition that shaped his early life: Cronus's retention of his siblings. The myths describe this encounter simply. Zeus compels Cronus to release the swallowed children. In many accounts, this occurs through a potion administered to Cronus, causing him to bring forth Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. This moment restores balance in the mythic order. The next generation of gods, previously held in suspension, now appears fully formed. They are not infants, but adult deities, ready to take part in shaping the developing cosmos. The release of the siblings marks the beginning of a unified force that will eventually challenge the Titans. The emergence of Zeus and his siblings introduces the final phase of cosmic preparation before the Titanomachy. Conflict between Titans and Olympians. Yet even at this stage, the myths remain calm. There is no emphasis on fear, vengeance, or emotional turmoil. Instead, the story presents a structural shift. The new generation is now present, and the balance of cosmic power begins to move. Zeus, as the one who survives and returns, becomes the central figure in this shift. His role is not defined by personality in the early myths, but by function. He represents the arrival of a new order, one that will eventually lead to the creation of Mount Olympus as the center of divine authority. By the end of this stage, the essential elements of the coming transition are in place. The Titans remain in their long-held positions. Cronus still governs, but the Olympian generation now exists fully. The world is preparing for its next major transformation, one that will determine the structure of Greek mythology for all subsequent stories. The cosmos has moved from primordial stillness to structure, and now from structure toward action. The next step will be the first major conflict in Greek myth. Not chaotic warfare, but a transition described through cosmic forces arranging themselves into new patterns. With Zeus and his siblings now restored to the world, Greek mythology enters its first major period of cosmic conflict, the Titanomachy, often called the War of the Titans. Yet Ebenere, the ancient sources describe events in a restrained and symbolic way. This is not a war in the human sense. It is a structured transition between generations, reflecting the natural progression of power from one cosmic order to another. The conflict begins when Zeus, now fully grown, recognizes that the cosmos cannot remain under the rule of Cronus and the Titans forever. The world has expanded beyond its earlier structures. New beings, new cycles, and new patterns of existence have emerged. The older generation represents stability, but the younger generation carries the potential for development. The Titanomachy becomes the formal shift from one era to the next. Zeus gathers his siblings, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, forming the core of what will later become the Olympian order. Together, they represent essential domains of existence: the hearth, fertility, family, the underworld, and the sea. Their unity symbolizes the beginning of a more organized divine hierarchy. To strengthen their position, the Olympians seek allies from among the early beings produced by Gaia and Uranus. Zeus releases the Cyclopes, who had been confined since the earliest days of creation. In return, the Cyclopes provide the Olympians with distinctive powers. Zeus receives the thunderbolt. Poseidon receives the trident. Hades receives a helm associated with invisibility. These symbols of authority reflect the alignment of cosmic forces with the needs of the new order. The Hecatonchires, beings of immense strength, also join Zeus's side. Their presence represents the unleashing of natural forces that had remained dormant during the Titans' rule. In Greek myth, alliance often reflects the realignment of cosmic principles. Stability yields to expansion, structure to action, and potential to expression. On the side of the Titans, Cronus remains the central figure. His siblings stand with him, maintaining the order established during their era. Their position is not portrayed as unjust. Rather, it reflects the natural tension between continuity and change. The Titans embody the earlier structures of the universe, the broad forces of memory, law, light, water, and cosmic cycles. The myths describe the conflict as lasting 10 years. This duration symbolizes completeness in ancient thought, marking the Titanomachy as a full cycle of transformation. Yet specific episodes of the struggle are described in minimal detail. The focus is not on tactics or battles, but on the movement of the cosmos from one generation to another. The central theme is alignment. Zeus and the Olympians represent the emergence of a more articulated divine system. The Titans represent the broad, foundational forces of the earlier world. Their conflict expresses the passing of authority from cosmic principles to more defined divine personalities. Throughout the Titanomachy, Gaia plays a quiet but significant role. She supports the transition by guiding Zeus in his alliances. Her presence signals continuity with the earliest phases of creation. Gaia does not oppose the Titans directly. Instead, she ensures that the cosmos continues its natural progression toward complexity and order. The eventual outcome is the victory of the Olympians. The Titans are not destroyed. They are confined to Tartarus, the deep region beneath the world. This confinement reflects a reorganization rather than an end. The Titans continue to exist, but their role shifts to a more distant part of the cosmic structure. Tartarus becomes a space where earlier powers remain present but no longer govern. With the Titanomachy concluded, Zeus and his siblings take their places as the new rulers of the cosmos. The world enters a new era, characterized by clearer domains of power, more defined divine personalities, and a more articulated mythological landscape. The rule of the Olympians marks the beginning of stories involving human beings, sacred laws, and the relationships between gods and mortals. The Titanomachy stands as the formal transition between two great eras in Greek mythology. It is not described as a moment of chaos, but as a necessary adjustment. The cosmos now contains distinct realms: sky, sea, underworld, and earth, and requires deities suited to managing these separate domains. Zeus in the sky, Poseidon in the sea, and Hades in the underworld reflect this new organization. By the end of the Titanomachy, the mythological universe is prepared for the stories that define Greek mythology as it is widely known today. The foundational forces remain present, but the world gains a new clarity. The Olympians do not erase the past. They build upon it, creating a divine order that will endure through generations of myths, rituals, and cultural traditions. With Mount Olympus established as the center of divine life, Greek mythology begins to focus more closely on the figures who shape this new order. The Olympian gods form a large, interconnected family, each deity linked by lineage, function, and shared presence on the mountain. Their relationships create a structure through which the ancient Greeks understood natural forces, social patterns, and the rhythms of daily existence. At the center of this divine family stands Zeus, who holds the sky and guides the order of the cosmos. His authority is not based on conflict alone, but on the ability to govern through balance. Zeus oversees agreements among the gods and maintains stability across the different realms. From his position, he ensures that the seasons follow their cycles. Storms arise and pass, and the world remains cohesive. Hera, his partner, embodies the institution of marriage and the continuity of the household. Her role reflects the importance of family structure in ancient Greek life. She is presented as a stabilizing presence, connected with the protection of married life and the formal bonds that hold communities together. Hera's influence extends across city-states, where her sanctuaries often served as centers of civic identity. Demeter, another sibling of Zeus, is associated with agriculture. She represents the fertile soil, the growth of grain, and the yearly cycle of planting and harvest. In a land where agriculture shapes survival and culture, Demeter's presence on Olympus connects human experience directly with divine oversight. Her influence extends beyond the fields, touching rituals, seasonal festivals, and the earliest explanations for changes in nature. Hestia, linked to the hearth, symbolizes warmth and stability inside the home. The hearth was central to ancient domestic life, the place where food was prepared, gatherings occurred, and rituals were carried out. Hestia's presence among the Olympians reflects a quiet but essential aspect of Greek life: the importance of steady, familiar order within households and communities. Among the younger Olympians, Athena stands out as the embodiment of wisdom and skill. She emerges fully formed and becomes associated with strategy, craftsmanship, and clear judgment. Her presence reflects the intellectual and practical concerns of Greek society. Cities dedicated temples to her, linking civic life with her qualities of discipline and thoughtful planning. Apollo, a son of Zeus, becomes associated with music, healing, sunlight, and order. His twin sister, Artemis, represents the wilderness, the hunt, and the natural balance of animal life. Together, they reflect the dual aspects of nature, its calm harmony and its untamed independence. Their roles link celestial rhythms with the cycles of day, night, and the natural world. Ares, associated with conflict, represents force and action rather than strategy. His presence in the pantheon acknowledges that conflict, though disruptive, is part of the human experience. In contrast, Hephaestus becomes the divine craftsman, connected with fire and metalwork. His role shows how mythology incorporates practical skills into the divine order. Aphrodite, associated with attraction and beauty, expresses the ancient belief that harmony and connection influence both gods and mortals. Her presence on Olympus reflects the idea that relationships, alliances, and the natural force of attraction shape the world as much as physical power. Hermes, acting as messenger and guide, moves freely between realms. His mobility represents communication, travel, trade, and the movement of information, all vital to the functioning of Greek society. Through Hermes, Greek mythology acknowledges the importance of pathways that connect different worlds, both divine and human. The Olympian family is not unified by a single purpose. Instead, it reflects the complexity of the natural world. Each deity represents a different aspect of existence, and together they form a system in which multiple forces coexist. Greek mythology does not present the gods as perfect or uniform. They differ in temperament and influence, and their interactions reflect the varied conditions of life. Despite this diversity, the Olympians share a collective function. They maintain the order of the cosmos. Their presence on Mount Olympus symbolizes a stable center from which the rhythms of the world extend. Seasons, weather, growth, tides, and patterns of daily life remain consistent because the gods uphold these structures. At the same time, the Olympians interact with human beings. Their stories explain the origins of rituals, the meaning of natural events, and the structure of social institutions. The gods do not govern from a remote or abstract distance. They remain connected to the world, influencing its cycles and responding to actions taken by mortals. By presenting the gods as a family, Greek mythology creates a coherent framework through which people could understand the world. Each deity contributes to the larger whole, representing forces that shape both nature and society. This interconnected structure makes the mythological world feel both orderly and dynamic, reflecting the balance the ancient Greeks observed in their as the Olympian order becomes established. The stories begin to expand outward. The gods influence landscapes, shape the lives of early mortals, and take part in events that link divine action with human experience. As the Olympian family becomes more defined, Greek mythology begins to highlight the roles of the younger gods. Those who represent refined aspects of nature, human experience, and the rhythms of the world. These deities bring clarity to the mythological landscape. Their presence illustrates how the ancient Greeks understood different layers of life, from thought and craftsmanship to emotion, music, and the natural environment. Among the younger Olympians, Athena stands as one of the most distinctive figures. She emerges fully formed and is immediately associated with wisdom, skill, and strategic thought. Athena's domain includes craftsmanship, practical knowledge, and the ability to approach challenges with clarity. Her presence reflects values deeply connected to everyday Greek society: careful planning, steady judgment, and the balance between thought and action. Cities often viewed her as a symbol of civic identity and stability. Apollo, another central figure, embodies order, harmony, and the steady qualities of sunlight. He is linked with music, healing, and the structured patterns found in nature. Apollo represents the calm, measured side of the cosmos. His presence mirrors the concept of balance, the idea that the world operates within understandable rhythms. Sanctuaries dedicated to him served as centers for healing and interpretation, connecting divine order with human needs. Apollo's twin sister, Artemis, represents a different aspect of nature, associated with wild places, animals, and the hunt. She reflects the untouched world beyond human settlement. Artemis embodies the balance between life and nature's independence. Her presence in the pantheon shows the recognition that the natural world has its own rhythms, separate from those of human communities. Ares, connected with conflict and force, occupies a distinct place among the younger Olympians. His role acknowledges that struggle, competition, and physical confrontation exist within the world. Greek mythology does not present Ares as a symbol of chaos. Instead, he represents the straightforward, direct aspects of conflict, the kind of force that exists without strategy or deliberation. His presence adds another dimension to the understanding of how the world functions. In contrast, Hephaestus brings craftsmanship to the divine order. Associated with fire and metalworking, he represents creation through skill. Hephaestus's domain reflects the importance of craft in ancient Greek life, the shaping of tools, the forging of weapons, and the construction of objects essential for both daily use and ritual practice. His presence acknowledges that human technology has a place in the mythological structure. Aphrodite, linked with attraction and connection, expresses forces that influence both gods and mortals. She represents the tendency of beings to come together, form relationships, and shape their interactions through harmony or desire. In Greek mythology, attraction is understood as a natural force, as essential to the structure of the world as wind or water. Aphrodite embodies this principle in a clear and accessible way. Hermes, often portrayed as a messenger, serves as the link between different parts of the cosmos. He moves easily between the mortal world, the divine realm, and the underworld. This mobility reflects the importance of communication, trade, and the movement of information in ancient Greek society. Hermes' role acknowledges that the world functions smoothly when its different parts remain connected. Another younger Olympian, Dionysus, appears in various traditions as a later addition to the pantheon. He is associated with vitality, seasonal growth, and the shifting boundaries between order and natural impulse. His presence reflects the idea that the world contains rhythms that are both structured and changing. Through Dionysus, mythology acknowledges renewal, transformation, and the cycles that shape agricultural life. Together, The younger Olympians introduce a new level of detail into the mythological framework. The primordial beings shaped the world's foundations. The Titans established broad cosmic structures. The early Olympians arranged the major realms. The younger deities refined the system, giving the cosmos recognizable patterns that align with human experience. Their roles also create space for more complex interactions, while the primordial and Titan generations are linked mainly by lineage. The Olympians, both older and younger, interact in ways that influence events across the natural and human world. Their actions explain rituals, seasonal changes, social structures, and the origins of certain practices. The presence of distinct roles among the younger Olympians reflects the ancient Greek view of the world as composed of interconnected forces, each with its own function. Wisdom, music, wild nature, conflict, craftsmanship, connection, movement, renewal. These are not abstract ideas in the myths. They appear as divine presences shaping the environment and influencing human life. As the younger Olympians take their places within the pantheon, the structure of Greek mythology becomes more complete. The divine world now includes deities, representing the key elements of existence, preparing the mythic universe for stories about the origins of humanity, the actions of heroes, and the interactions between gods and mortals. As the Olympian world becomes settled and structured, Greek mythology shifts its focus toward the origins of humanity and the forces that shape human life. One of the central figures in this transition is Prometheus, a titan whose role bridges the older and newer generations of divine beings. His actions do not involve the rule of the cosmos or the cycles of the natural world. Instead, they shape the relationship between gods and mortals in a calm, foundational way. Prometheus is known primarily for his connection to human development. In many ancient sources, he is presented as a figure of foresight and practical understanding. His name itself is associated with thinking ahead, a quality that sets him apart from other beings in the mythic landscape. While the Olympians govern natural forces, Prometheus becomes linked to the emergence of human culture. Greek mythology offers different accounts of the origins of humankind, but Prometheus appears in many of them as a helper, guide, or creator. In one widely known tradition, he fashions humans from clay, giving form to beings who can live within the world shaped by the gods. This act symbolizes the idea that humanity arises from the earth itself, molded into shape through skill and intention. Once humans appear in the mythic world, they require the means to survive and develop. This is where Prometheus's most well-known contribution occurs: the gift of fire. In early Greek thought, fire represents more than warmth or light. It symbolizes knowledge, craftsmanship, and the ability to transform raw materials into useful forms. Fire enables cooking, tool-making, metalworking, and many aspects of early civilization. Offering fire to humans becomes a gesture that introduces the foundations of culture. The myths describe Prometheus obtaining fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. The details vary, but the symbolic meaning remains constant. Humans receive a tool that allows them to expand their abilities and shape their environment. This act marks a quiet but important shift in the mythological relationship between mortals and divine powers. With fire, humans become capable of developing skills and technologies previously accessible only to gods or divine craftsmen. Prometheus's assistance to humanity reflects his position as a mediator between divine and mortal realms. He does not oppose the gods, nor does he act out of conflict. His role simply emphasizes the value of foresight, knowledge, and careful planning qualities that help humans establish themselves in the mythological world. The myths also describe consequences associated with Prometheus's actions. Zeus, as the ruler of the cosmos, recognizes that the gift of fire changes the balance between gods and mortals. Humans, once dependent on natural conditions, now possess a resource that allows them to shape their... In mythology, such a shift requires adjustment in the cosmic order. Zeus responds by establishing boundaries that define the relationship between humans and gods. These boundaries appear in stories involving sacrifices, rituals, and the distribution of offerings. The details vary across ancient traditions, but the underlying idea is consistent, because humans now possess tools that help them develop. They must also maintain a respectful connection to the divine world. Another well-known part of the Prometheus tradition concerns his punishment. In many accounts, Zeus orders that Prometheus be bound and subjected to a prolonged penalty. This story reflects the idea that cosmic balance must be maintained. Prometheus's punishment symbolizes the tension between human advancement and divine authority. Yet even this element of the myth is presented in a measured way. Prometheus remains a figure of endurance and long-term perspective, continuing to represent foresight, even in difficulty. Despite the consequences, the gift of fire remains a defining moment for humanity. It introduces the possibility of growth, culture, and innovation. The myth acknowledges that human life develops through a combination of natural ability, influence, and acquired knowledge. Prometheus' role serves as a reminder that culture arises through learning and effort, qualities deeply valued in ancient Greek society. The story also prepares the mythological world for the next developments involving humans, gods, and the early ages of humanity. With fire, humans begin to take a more active role in the mythic framework. Their lives become connected to cycles of labor, agriculture, craftsmanship, and ritual practice. The presence of fire also supports narratives about community, as hearths become centers of domestic life. By the end of this phase, the world is more connected. The Olympians govern the main forces of nature, and humans begin to understand their environment through skills and knowledge. Prometheus stands at the point where divine and human worlds intersect, offering a foundation for the stories that follow, especially those concerning the different ages of humanity and the changing conditions of life as human beings enter the mythological world. Greek tradition describes their early history through a sequence of distinct eras known as the ages of humanity. These ages do not function as historical periods in the modern sense. Instead, they illustrate different conditions under which humans live, each shaped by a combination of divine influence, natural environment, and human behavior. The sequence reflects the belief that the world changes gradually over time, passing through cycles that affect the quality and nature of life. The first of these eras is the Golden Age. In this earliest state, humans live under the quiet guidance of the Titan Cronus before the time of the Olympians. The world during the Golden Age is described as peaceful and balanced. People do not experience hardship or struggle. The earth provides food without the need for labor. There is no conflict, illness, or aging. Human life flows gently, sustained by a natural abundance that requires no effort. This age reflects the idea of a world at rest, a stage in which existence is simple and harmonious. The Golden Age is not presented as a complex society. It is an ideal state, free from tension. Humans in this era do not create cities or tools. They simply live within the natural equilibrium of the world. Over time, the Golden Age comes to an end, giving way to the Silver Age. In this era, the world changes its structure, and human life becomes more challenging. People grow differently, experience longer childhoods, and must adapt to new conditions. The myths describe the Silver Age as a time when humans begin to neglect the rituals that maintain connection with the gods. As a result, the balance between divine and human worlds becomes less stable. The Silver Age introduces a shift toward greater complexity. Humans develop habits and behaviors that differ from the simplicity of the Golden Age. Their lives become influenced by the need for social order and responsibility. The natural world still provides for them, but not with the ease found in the earlier era. This change reflects the idea that existence evolves, and that each age requires new forms of understanding and cooperation. After the Silver Age comes the Bronze Age, which marks a significant departure from the earlier eras. The myths describe people of the Bronze Age as strong, resilient, and inclined toward conflict. They begin crafting tools and structures from bronze, a metal that becomes central to early Greek culture. The use of bronze symbolizes technological development, skill, and the ability to transform materials through effort. The Bronze Age is characterized by physical strength and activity. Humans in this era engage more directly with their environment. They build, create, and confront challenges that require endurance. At the same time, their inclination toward conflict reflects the idea that technological progress brings new tensions. The Bronze Age ends not through a single event, but through its own internal character. An age defined by strength eventually gives way to a new form of life. Following the Bronze Age comes the Age of Heroes. This era stands apart from the others. It centers on the figures who appear in many Greek stories, individuals whose deeds form the basis of epic poetry and cultural memory. The Age of Heroes includes characters such as Perseus, Theseus, Heracles, and the participants in the Trojan War. Unlike the earlier ages, which describe broad human conditions, the Age of Heroes focuses on specific individuals whose actions shape the world. These heroes stand between gods and mortals, representing the possibility of extraordinary achievement within human form. Their stories emphasize courage, endurance, and the challenges of navigating a world influenced by both divine forces and human limitations. The Age of Heroes also introduces themes of mortality, loss, and legacy. Although the heroes achieve remarkable deeds, their lives eventually reach natural limits. Their era reflects a transitional stage between the early strength of humanity and the more familiar conditions of later life. After the Age of Heroes comes the final stage, the Iron Age. This is the age in which ordinary human life continues. It represents the world as the ancient Greeks understood it. A place where work, uncertainty, and change are part of daily experience. In the Iron Age, people labor for their food, build their homes, create communities, and face the challenges of time and mortality. The Iron Age is not described as a decline, but as a realistic portrayal of life shaped by effort. Humans develop skills, organize societies, and engage in cultural practices that connect them with the divine world. The presence of rituals, festivals, and stories reflects their attempts to understand their environment and maintain balance within it. Across these ages, Greek mythology presents a calm, structured view of human development. Each age reflects a different relationship between people, nature, and the gods. The progression from abundance to effort, from simplicity to complexity, shows the gradual unfolding of human life within the mythological cosmos. By describing multiple eras rather than a single origin, Greek mythology emphasizes that existence changes through cycles. Each age contributes to the overall structure of the world, preparing the way for the interactions between gods and mortals that define many later myths. As Greek mythology expands beyond the realms of gods and primordial forces, it begins to describe the emergence of heroes figures who stand between divine and mortal worlds. These individuals are not gods, yet they possess qualities and origins that place them above ordinary humans. Their stories reflect the belief that human life can be shaped by exceptional strength, endurance, or insight. Heroes also serve as bridges between mythic time and the world known to ancient Greek communities. Most heroes in Greek mythology are connected to the gods through lineage. Their births often involve a union between a deity and a mortal parent. This connection symbolizes the idea that certain qualities, courage, resilience, or notable skill, arise from a mixture of divine influence and human experience. These heroes do not govern natural forces, but they face challenges that require strength and resolve, reflecting the early human struggle to navigate a complex world. One of the earliest heroes is Perseus, known for his journey to obtain the head of Medusa. His lineage links him to Zeus, and his story reflects themes of endurance and careful planning rather than sudden triumph. The calm, structured progression of his narrative, traveling to distant lands, receiving assistance from divine beings, and returning with a symbolic object, mirrors the pattern of many Greek myths in which careful guidance shapes human success. Another central figure is Theseus, associated with Athens. His role includes establishing order, clearing pathways, and overcoming challenges that stand between communities and their development. Theseus's actions emphasize navigation through landscapes filled with uncertainty. His story reflects the transition from early mythic environments to more organized social structures. Among the most prominent heroes is Heracles, whose labors form one of the most well-known cycles in Greek mythology. Because of this, he receives an entire section later in the documentary. Heracles represents endurance and the ability to face tasks that require repeated effort. His labors are connected to both natural forces and divine expectations, reinforcing the link between human persistence and the broader structure of the world. Other heroes, such as Bellerophon, Jason, and Atalanta, contribute to the diversity of the heroic tradition. Bellerophon's journey with Pegasus, Jason's leadership of the Argonauts, and Atalanta's swift abilities all reflect qualities that ancient Greek culture valued: courage, cooperation, and skill. Their stories occur in landscapes shaped by both the gods and the lingering presence of primordial beings. Heroic lineages often have lasting effects on the mortal world. The children and descendants of heroes become founders of city-states, participants in major events, or figures connected with local rituals. Many Greek communities trace their origins back to a heroic ancestor, linking their identity to the mythological past. This connection offered continuity between mythic time and the present, making heroes important not only in stories, but also in cultural memory. Unlike the gods, heroes live within the limits of time. They achieve remarkable deeds, but they do not escape the natural cycle of life. Their presence in mythology highlights human potential without separating it from the realities of mortality. Their stories acknowledge hardship, loss, and the challenges of navigating a world influenced by forces beyond human control. Heroes also contribute to the organization of the mythic world. They clear dangerous paths, confront creatures that represent natural hazards, and establish the conditions that allow communities to grow. In doing so, they shape the environment, transforming wild spaces into places where culture and society can develop. This theme appears across many myths, reflecting the ancient Greek understanding that order arises through effort. Although many heroes are connected with the gods, their achievements remain grounded in human qualities. Strength, patience, courage, and resilience are central to their stories. Even when divine assistance appears, the hero must still perform the task. This balance emphasizes the Greek view that human effort holds value, even in a world influenced by divine powers. The presence of heroes also marks a shift in the tone of mythology. Early myths focused on cosmic creation and divine succession. Heroic myths bring the narrative closer to the human world, exploring relationships, journeys, communities, and the challenges of everyday life. They form a bridge between the vast forces of the cosmos and the lived experiences of ancient Greek society. By the time these heroic traditions become established, the mythological landscape has reached a point of fullness. The primordial beings form the foundation of the world. The Titans create broad categories of existence. The Olympians bring order and structure. Monsters highlight the untamed edges of the cosmos. Heroes navigate these elements, creating connections and shaping the human environment. Their presence prepares the mythological universe for more detailed stories, including those centered on individual achievements, symbolic labors, and interactions with both gods and monsters. Among all the heroes of Greek mythology, Heracles occupies a unique place. His stories are widespread. His lineage is closely connected to Zeus, and his actions shape many parts of the mythological landscape. What distinguishes Heracles from other heroes is not only his strength, but the regular structure of his challenges, known as the 12 labors. These labors form a sequence of tasks that require endurance, persistence, and careful adaptation to the world's natural and supernatural forces. Heracles' background varies across ancient sources, but the common thread is that he stands between the divine and mortal worlds. His life contains difficulty from the beginning, and the 12 labors emerge as a way to navigate these difficulties. The labors do not symbolize punishment alone. They represent a structured path through which Heracles interacts with different parts of the world: mountains, forests, coastal regions, sacred spaces, and distant lands. The first labor involves the Nemean lion, a creature described as invulnerable to weapons. The lion is associated with rocky terrain and the challenges of remote landscapes. Heracles succeeds not through force alone, but through adaptation, finding a way to overcome the creature using close physical strength rather than tools. This labor shows how heroes must adjust to conditions shaped by the natural world. The second labor concerns the Lernaean Hydra, a many-headed creature found in marshlands. The environment plays a central role here. Swamps, shifting waters, and unstable ground. Heracles relies on persistence and assistance to counter the creature's regenerative nature. This labor introduces the idea that challenges can require cooperation and method, not simply strength. The Cyrenian hind appears in the third labor. This swift animal is linked to Artemis and belongs to a sacred landscape. Heracles must capture it without harming it, showing that not all tasks rely on confrontation. Some require patience and respect for divine boundaries. The fourth labor focuses on the Erymanthian boar, associated with highland regions and winter conditions. The boar represents the unpredictable force of wild nature. Heracles captures it through steady pursuit, reflecting how endurance and understanding of terrain contribute to success. The fifth labor, cleaning the Aegean stables, shifts from wilderness to human space. Heracles uses environmental features, specifically water flow, to complete the task. This labor highlights how heroes can manipulate natural systems to resolve practical challenges. In the sixth labor, Heracles confronts the Stymphalian birds. These creatures inhabit marsh, quiet areas, reflecting a landscape where sound and movement carry differently. The labor underscores how understanding an environment's characteristics can be essential to completing a task. The Cretan bull, featured in the seventh labor, connects Heracles to the island landscapes of the Aegean world. The bull symbolizes both strength and instability. Capturing it requires control and restraint rather than destruction, reflecting the idea that some forces must be managed rather than eliminated. The eighth labor involves the mares of Diomedes, animals linked to themes of disorder and threat. Heracles resolves this labor by redirecting the forces at play, demonstrating how challenges can change when underlying conditions shift. The girdle of Hippolyta, ninth in the sequence, introduces interactions with organized societies. This labor involves negotiation, misunderstanding, and shifting circumstances. It reflects how human communities influence heroic tasks differently from wild landscapes. The 10th labor, capturing the cattle of Geryon, requires Heracles to travel to distant lands associated with the western edges of the known world. This labor acknowledges the vastness of the mythological horizon and the need for heroes to navigate unfamiliar places. The 11th labor, obtaining the apples of the Hesperides, brings Heracles into contact with beings connected to memory, guardianship, and the edges of the cosmic order. The apples symbolize knowledge or endurance, and the labor emphasizes the importance of guidance from earlier divine beings. The final labor, bringing Cerberus from the underworld, introduces Heracles to the deepest boundary in Greek mythology, the separation between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Heracles completes the task without using weapons, showing that certain challenges require acknowledgement of the world's structure rather than confrontation. Across the 12 labors, Heracles interacts with different regions, forces, and beings. The labors do not present him as conquering the world, but as learning to navigate it. Each task highlights a specific aspect of the environment: rocky hills, marshlands, sacred groves, distant islands, open waters, structured communities, and the underworld. Through these encounters, Heracles becomes a figure who understands the breadth of the mythological landscape. The labors also show the connection between human effort and divine oversight. Heracles receives support from the gods at various points, but he must still rely on endurance and adaptability. His success depends on responding to conditions rather than resisting them. This theme aligns with broader Greek beliefs about human experience. Effort, observation, and resilience shape one's ability to progress through life. By completing the 12 labors, Heracles becomes one of the most significant heroes in Greek mythology. His story reflects the idea that challenges, when approached with persistence and understanding, contribute to the shaping of both individual character and the broader world. As the world of heroes expands, Greek mythology gathers many individual stories into a larger sequence known as the Trojan cycle. This cycle includes events leading up to the Trojan War, the long conflict itself, and the journeys that follow. Rather than focusing on a single hero, the Trojan cycle reflects a wide network of lineages, communities, and interactions shaped by both divine and human forces. It stands at the intersection of myth, tradition, and cultural memory. The origins of the cycle began with a simple idea found in many Greek sources. Significant events arise from choices made by both gods and mortals. In the case of Troy, the sequence begins with a gathering of deities. At this event, a symbolic object, often described as a golden apple, leads to a decision involving three goddesses: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each offers a different promise to Paris, a young Trojan prince chosen to decide their dispute. This decision, known as the Judgment of Paris, reflects the idea that human and divine worlds can shape one another in subtle ways. Paris's choice sets the stage for the events that follow. He travels to Sparta, where he meets Helen, whose presence becomes central to the cycle. When Helen departs with Paris, relationships among Greek communities shift. Leaders across the region join together to retrieve her, forming an alliance of figures whose stories had developed independently. This gathering marks the beginning of the war. As the Greek forces sail toward Troy, the myths emphasize the scale of the undertaking. Each leader brings a group from his region, forming a diverse coalition. Their presence reflects the connectedness of ancient Greek communities through shared traditions, rituals, and alliances. The city of Troy itself stands as a significant location in Greek mythology. It is described as a fortified city with strong walls and a long history. In mythic terms, Troy represents a point where different worlds meet east and west, coastal trade routes and inland regions, divine influence, and human effort. The city becomes the setting for encounters involving many generations of heroes. The Trojan War unfolds over a long period, often described as 10 years. The ancient sources do not present continuous narrative details of the conflict. Instead, they focus on key episodes involving figures such as Achilles, Hector, Ajax, Agamemnon, and Odysseus. These individuals come from different backgrounds and carry distinct qualities that contribute to the complex structure of the cycle. Achilles represents exceptional capability combined with a clear understanding of personal limitation. His role centers on the balance between action and restraint. Hector, defending Troy, becomes a figure associated with responsibility and the quiet endurance of duty. Their encounter reflects the meeting of two different forms of heroic life. Other figures add depth to the cycle. Patroclus shows the importance of loyalty within heroic culture. Ajax demonstrates steadfastness and strength. Odysseus brings problem-solving and adaptability, qualities that become central in the stories that follow the war. Together, these figures form a broad view of human ability and experience. The involvement of the gods continues throughout the Trojan cycle. Different deities support different sides, not through overwhelming intervention but through subtle influence, guidance, or withdrawal. Their participation reflects the idea that major events in the mythological world occur at the intersection of natural forces, human decisions, and divine presence. As the conflict progresses, the cycle emphasizes the effects of time, endurance, and shifting circumstances. The war is not described as constant battle. Instead, it consists of periods of negotiation, changes in leadership, and moments where the rhythms of daily life continue, even in the context of a long conflict. This structure reflects the ancient understanding that large-scale events unfold gradually. The fall of Troy becomes the defining moment of the cycle. The Greeks enter the city not through direct force, but through a strategic design associated with Odysseus, the wooden horse that conceals a group of soldiers. This event symbolizes the importance of thought and planning alongside physical strength. The fall of the city marks the end of Troy's long history within the mythological tradition. After the city's destruction, the Trojan cycle shifts to the journeys of the returning heroes. Each figure faces different challenges on the way home. The most extensive of these narratives is the journey of Odysseus, described separately in another major tradition. His travels reflect encounters with distant places, unfamiliar beings, and natural forces that shape the world beyond the familiar Greek landscape. The Trojan cycle, taken together, illustrates the complexity of Greek mythology. It combines divine influence, human decisions, long-standing traditions, and the presence of earlier mythic forces. The cycle does not focus solely on conflict. It presents communities, responsibilities, journeys, and the gradual unfolding of events over many years. By the end of the Trojan cycle, the mythological world has explored a wide range of human experience, cooperation, endurance, leadership, displacement, and return. These themes prepare the way for the next stories, which examine the movements of individual heroes through a world shaped by gods, monsters, and shifting environments. After the fall of Troy, Greek mythology turns to a series of journeys that reflect the challenges of returning home after a long conflict. The most detailed of these journeys is that of Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. His return becomes a structured exploration of distant places, unfamiliar forces, and the gradual movement from the disruptions of war back to the stability of daily life. In mythic tradition, this journey is not simply travel. It is a way of understanding how humans navigate a world shaped by both natural and divine influences. Odysseus begins his voyage from Troy with a group of ships, following routes that connect islands, coasts, and open waters of the Mediterranean. Each stop introduces a different aspect of the mythological landscape, These places are not described as exotic for their own sake. Instead, they highlight the range of environments encountered by travelers in ancient tradition. One of the early episodes involves the Lotus Eaters, a group whose land offers food that causes forgetfulness. The episode reflects concerns about losing awareness and direction during travel. It symbolizes how unfamiliar environments can influence human behavior, subtly shifting focus away from responsibilities and goals. As Odysseus continues, he encounters the Cyclopes, beings associated with remote and rugged terrains. Their presence in myth often reflects isolation, the absence of organized community, and the unpredictable nature of life far from familiar lands. Odysseus's encounter with Polyphemus emphasizes the need for observation, planning, and care when dealing with unknown forces. Another important stop is the island of Elis, the keeper of the winds. Here, Odysseus receives assistance in the form of a controlled wind stored in a container. This reflects the ancient view that winds are natural forces requiring balance and careful handling. When the winds escape, the ships are pushed far from their intended route, illustrating how easily external conditions can redirect human plans. The journey then proceeds to the land of the Laestrygonians, where Odysseus faces beings described as giant and hostile. Their appearance suggests environments marked by danger and uncertainty. These encounters emphasize the variety of conditions that travelers might meet across different regions. On the island of Circe, the story shifts to interactions with a figure who has knowledge of transformation and natural forces. Circe's role in the myth highlights the idea that certain individuals in the mythological world possess understanding that extends beyond ordinary perception. Her guidance helps Odysseus prepare for the next phases of his journey, showing the importance of acquiring knowledge before moving into unfamiliar territory. One of the most significant episodes occurs when Odysseus travels to the underworld. Here, he seeks information from the shade of the seer, Tyrese. This moment represents an encounter with memory, legacy, and the boundary between life and death. The underworld in Greek mythology is not a place of torment, but a structured realm where souls reside. Odysseus's visit emphasizes the importance of reflecting on the past before continuing forward. As he returns to the surface world, Odysseus faces the sirens, whose songs reflect the power of allure and distraction. Passing them safely requires preparation and restraint. This episode underscores the theme of maintaining direction despite appealing but potentially harmful influences. Further along the route, Odysseus navigates between Scylla and Charybdis, two forces situated opposite each other in a narrow passage. Scylla represents the dangers of rocky coasts, while Charybdis symbolizes powerful war. These figures express natural maritime hazards familiar to ancient sailors. The passage between them highlights the careful decision-making required to move through challenging environments. Odysseus then reaches the island associated with the cattle of Helios, where his crew faces the consequences of disregarding divine instructions. This episode reflects the importance of maintaining respect for natural cycles and sacred spaces. The resulting difficulties extend the journey further, illustrating how disruptions in balance can lead to new challenges. Eventually, Odysseus arrives at the island of Calypso, where time passes in a quiet, unchanging environment. Calypso's realm represents stillness, a pause far removed from the movement of the outside world. Although comfortable, it lacks the progression necessary for a return to normal life. Odysseus eventually departs with assistance from the gods, continuing his journey toward home. Another important stage occurs when Odysseus reaches the land of the Phoenicians, a community known for skilled seafaring and hospitality. Their assistance reflects the significance of cooperation and the role of well-organized societies in supporting travelers. With their help, Odysseus finally returns to Ethiopia. Upon his arrival, the journey's focus shifts from travel to restoration. Odysseus observes his home, evaluates its condition, and works to re-establish order. His return reflects the theme of reconnecting with familiar places after a long absence. The challenges he faces emphasize the importance of stability, continuity, and the responsibilities that come with leadership. The story of Odysseus's long return illustrates many aspects of the mythological world. Unfamiliar landscapes, guidance from knowledgeable figures, encounters with natural forces, and the importance of maintaining direction. The journey serves as a calm exploration of how individuals move through shifting environments while remaining connected to their origins. As Greek communities spread across the Mediterranean, their stories, rituals, and traditions traveled with them. This gradual movement did not occur through a single event, but through centuries of trade, settlement, and cultural exchange. Greek mythology expanded quietly alongside these movements, shaping and being shaped by the environments in which Greek-speaking peoples lived. The earliest stages of this expansion began during the period of Greek colonization, when communities established settlements along the coasts of Asia Minor, the Black Sea, southern Italy, and Sicily. These new cities remained connected to their places of origin through shared language, festivals, and religious practices. As settlers adapted to new landscapes, they carried their myths with them, integrating familiar stories into unfamiliar environments. Mountains, rivers, and coastal formations in these new areas often acquired names linked to Greek mythological figures. A hill might be associated with a local hero, while a spring might be connected with a nymph. These associations did not erase earlier local traditions. Instead, they blended with them, creating layered cultural landscapes. Greek mythology became part of a wider Mediterranean network, where stories served as a way to understand and organize the environment. Temples and sanctuaries also played a central role in this process. Greek settlers built places of worship dedicated to major gods such as Athena, Apollo, Hera, and Zeus. These sanctuaries reflected the architectural styles of their home regions, but adapted to local conditions. The presence of a temple helped unify communities, creating focal points for festivals, assemblies, and shared identity. In some areas, existing local deities merged with Greek gods through a process known as syncretism. For example, a local fertility goddess might be associated with Demeter, or a protective spirit connected with Artemis. These connections allowed communities to maintain older traditions while integrating new cultural elements. Greek mythology, as a flexible system, accommodated these adaptations without losing its core structure. Trade routes further supported the spread of myth. Maritime travel connected distant ports, allowing stories, objects, and rituals to move along with goods. A Greek merchant traveling to Egypt or Cyprus could encounter different cultural practices while sharing aspects of Greek tradition. Over time, these exchanges contributed to a broader Mediterranean understanding of divine figures, natural forces, and heroic patterns. The influence of Greek myth also appears in the development of literature and performance. Traveling poets and storytellers recited epic poetry at festivals, bringing the stories of the Trojan War, Heracles, and the Olympians to audiences. Far from their places of origin, performances of dramatic works in later periods further spread mythological themes, creating shared narratives across widely separated communities. In the western regions of the Mediterranean, particularly in southern Italy and Sicily, Greek colonies developed strong cultural identities. Some of these areas became known as centers of learning and artistic production. Philosophers, poets, and scholars emerged from these regions, contributing to the interpretation and preservation of mythological traditions. Their work helped refine the structure of Greek mythology and ensured its continuity. Similarly, in the Eastern Mediterranean, contact between Greek communities and older civilizations contributed to new interpretations of myth. Interactions with Egypt, Anatolia, and the Near East exposed Greek travelers to different stories about creation, divine forces, and cosmic order, while Greek mythology remained distinct. These interactions influenced certain motifs and provided new contexts for understanding the world. As Greek influence increased, certain myths became associated with specific locations. For example, the island of Delos held significance in stories of Apollo and Artemis. The Peloponnese became central to the labors of Heracles. Crete was linked with tales of Theseus and the Minotaur. These connections created a geographic map of mythology, linking landforms with narratives and rituals. The expansion of mythological tradition also affected the ways communities understood their origins. Many cities traced their foundations to heroic figures. A local leader might be recognized as a descendant of a hero from the Trojan cycle or another major tradition. These genealogies connected communities to the broader mythological world and helped establish a sense of continuity between mythic time and local history. Even as Greek mythology spread, its core structure remained stable. The Olympian gods continued to represent consistent domains. The stories of heroes maintained their recognizable patterns. Monsters, nymphs, and local spirits adapted to new landscapes, but retained their symbolic functions. This stability allowed Greek myth to flourish across a wide region without fragmenting. By the time Greek culture became dominant in many Mediterranean areas, mythology functioned as both a shared language and a flexible framework. It provided explanations for natural features, guided rituals, shaped festivals, and supported community identity. Through colonization, trade, performance, and cultural exchange, Greek myths became woven into the broader fabric of the Mediterranean world. As Greek mythology developed across centuries, its presence was not limited to temples, festivals, or poetic performances. It gradually became woven into the structure of everyday life. For ancient Greek communities, myth was not an abstract system or a distant collection of stories. It formed part of the environment people lived in, shaping how they understood natural phenomena, social customs, and the rhythms of the year. Daily life in ancient Greece took place within landscapes filled with mythological associations. A river might be connected with a local river god. A nearby spring could be linked to a nymph. A hilltop might be associated with an ancient hero. These connections were not treated as fictional embellishments, but as part of the identity of a place. People recognized natural features as connected to stories, which gave those places meaning and continuity. Household practices also included elements of myth. The hearth, for example, was the center of domestic life, and Hestia, the goddess associated with the hearth, served as a symbol of stability and continuity. Every meal, every gathering, and every family ritual took place within a space tied to her presence. This connection made myth part of the quiet routines of daily living. Agricultural cycles, which shaped the lives of farmers across Greece, were closely linked to divine influence. Demeter, associated with grain and harvest, played a central role in rituals, marking planting and reaping. Seasonal festivals reflected the understanding that the Earth's renewal depended not only on weather patterns, but on the harmony between human practices and the rhythms of nature. Through these rituals, myth became a guide for managing resources and time. In cities, communal life was structured around festivals, honoring various gods. These events were not occasional diversions. They served as markers of the calendar, bringing communities together for processions, performances, and shared meals. The Panathenaic festival in Athens honored Athena and emphasized civic identity, while the festivals of Dionysus involved dramatic performances that explored mythological themes. Through these celebrations, myth shaped civic unity and cultural memory. Craftspeople and traders also engaged with myth in practical ways. Sailors prayed to Poseidon before departing, acknowledging the uncertainty of travel and the importance of favorable conditions. Blacksmiths connected their work with Hephaestus, whose association with fire and metalworking reflected the value placed on skill. Shepherds, hunters, and farmers recognized deities linked to their trades, integrating myth into routine tasks. Education in many Greek communities included exposure to myth from childhood. Poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey were recited or referenced in public gatherings. These stories were not just literary works. They offered frameworks for understanding, courage, leadership, responsibility, and the relationship between humans and divine forces. Myth provided examples of behavior, decision-making, and consequence. Local heroes held special significance within many communities. Shrines dedicated to these figures served as places of remembrance and connection. People visited these sites to honor the past, seek protection, or express gratitude. Heroes were seen as influential figures who once shaped the land and continued to maintain a quiet presence within it. Myth also appeared in everyday objects. Pottery, household tools, and decorative items often carried scenes from well-known stories. These images served both artistic and educational functions. They allowed families to engage with myth through familiar, tangible objects. A cup showing a moment from a heroic journey, or a vase depicting a scene involving gods or monsters. In this way, myth remained part of domestic social customs, such as hospitality, had mythological roots as well. The concept of welcoming guests was linked to Zeus, the aspect of Zeus associated with hospitality and protection of travelers. This connection encouraged communities to treat visitors with care, reinforcing cultural values through mythological association. Even political life included references to myth. City-states traced their origins to divine or heroic founders, linking civic identity to the mythic past. Leaders invoked these connections during important events, reinforcing the idea that communities existed within a larger, continuous framework, shaped by the actions of earlier generations. Rites of passage, sukkas, coming-of-age, rituals, often drew on mythological narratives. Certain deities guided young people through transitions into adulthood. These connections emphasized that personal development was part of a larger pattern found throughout Greek mythology. Because myths were so deeply woven into daily practices, ancient Greek people did not typically separate myth from reality. Instead, myth formed part of the explanation for why the world functioned as it did. The behavior of winds, the changes of seasons, the growth of crops, the shift from day to night, all were seen as expressions of divine presence. Myth allowed people to understand natural processes within a consistent and familiar framework. By the time Greek mythology reached its full form, it had become more than a collection of stories about gods and heroes. It served as a cultural system that shaped daily life, linking individuals and communities to the natural world, the divine realm, and the memory of earlier generations. Across its long development, Greek mythology forms a complete and carefully structured vision of the world. It begins with the earliest forces of creation, moves through the generations of primordial beings and titans, and settles into the ordered presence of the Olympian gods. Each stage reflects a different layer of existence, from the foundations of the cosmos to the daily rhythms of human life. The stories of heroes, monsters, journeys, and distant landscapes expand this framework, showing how individuals navigate a world shaped by natural forces and divine influence. These narratives link mountains, rivers, islands, forests, and cities to the actions of gods and mortals, creating a landscape where every place carries meaning. The presence of familiar figures, Perseus, Theseus, Heracles, Achilles, Odysseus, connects human experience with the broader structure of the mythological universe. As Greek communities spread across the Mediterranean, their stories traveled with them. Myths, blended with local traditions, shaped festivals, guided rituals, and influenced the ways people understood their environment. They helped communities interpret natural events, organize agricultural cycles, and maintain social customs. In this way, mythology became part of daily life, rather than a distant collection of tales. The legacy of Greek mythology continues because of this clarity and structure. Its gods represent distinct domains. Its heroes illustrate endurance, skill, and adaptation. Its stories offer a view of the world that remains steady, even as cultures change. Through literature, art, and later philosophical interpretation, Greek myths became foundations for understanding nature, human behavior, and the patterns of history. Today, the mythological world constructed by ancient Greek communities remains recognizable. Its characters, places, and themes continue to provide insight into how earlier societies saw their surroundings and their place within them. The calm, ordered structure of Greek mythology endures as a reflection of a world shaped by memory, observation, and the long arc of human tradition.